Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie At, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next guest, Meagen Anderson, the founder of AFicioNAdo Certification Program, as well as Hop Forward Consulting. I cannot wait for you to listen to her story on this podcast. It's very transformative and informational. She's done a lot of self-help work and shares a ton of resources and a lot of mentors that were important to her in her life. If anyone out there is looking for support to potentially switch off alcohol, whether it be temporary, whether it be for health reasons, or whether it be any other reason, she certainly understands the journey and is open to connecting with you and helping you find the way through your new path. Meagen is an amazing person. She's super bright, she's super fun, and I love what she's doing for the industry. I hope you enjoy the episode as much as I do. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursday. My name is Jessie, and I have Meagen Anderson here today. Hey, Meagen, how are you today?
I'm great, Jessie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. I just met you like few weeks ago, and I love what you're doing. I can't wait to dig into it. So where are you calling from?
Yeah, today I'm at home in Franklin Grove, Illinois. It's a beautiful place in central Illinois, but been on the road a little bit this week and spend my time typically between Kalamazoo, Michigan, and here in central Illinois.
Nice. Couple of beautiful areas, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So where are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm actually from this area in Illinois. I've my career's taken me around the country. I was with kind of from Illinois, spent the first, from birth till college here. Then I moved to Texas for about 9 years or so. So I lived all over Texas, working in the craft beer brewing industry. And from Texas, I moved to Massachusetts. From there, I went to Indiana for a few years. I lived in Southwest Idaho, and then
That's
Michigan,
awesome.
Michigan and Illinois. So yeah, I've been the industry's taken me a lot of different places, which has been really wonderful. And I wasn't really classically trained to do any of these things. I did my background in education is in international politics, but I actually just completed my MBA in sustainability this June. So it kind of all finally found a way to make it all come together. But yeah, from the Midwest area, my mom worked in juvenile detention. My dad was basically worked at an agricultural wholesaler. So they sold fertilizer, bulk fuel oil, things like that. So yeah, I grew up detasseling corn, if you know what that is.
Ah, yes, I did the same thing. I'm from Iowa, so
it's like a rite of passage in the Midwest. That was my first job, is detasseling corn. It's actually how I met my husband when we were very young. We played a lot of basketball. In the Midwest, you played basketball or soccer and you detasseled. That's what you did for fun. So we were able to convert that into something very meaningful as we got older. But yeah, Illinois has been great to me. A lot of my family still lives here, but have had the pleasure of living and seeing many beautiful places.
I have not been to central Illinois. I've been to Chicago, of course. But I know people that live in Michigan, where you kind of live part-time, is beautiful up there. And I hope to get up there someday.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're totally invited. And it's got such great culture for our business, for the things that you and I are particularly interested in, the people that are probably listening today. I mean, Michigan, and we were just in Wisconsin yesterday. What an amazing area and region for, alcoholic, and now we'll just say alcohol-free and non-alcoholic beverage, because of the innovation that's come along with it. So yesterday, for example, I was in Wisconsin, and I went to a brewery there called Octopi, and they have an amazing craft brewery arm. They also make THC beverages there, and then they also make. They have a very large vacuum rectification unit. So they make some of the best non-alcoholic beers I've ever had. They make a chocolate s'mores stout that's really good. They make oh my gosh, like a Mexican lager, an Italian Pilsner that's really good. And I got the pleasure to speak with their president, Isaac, yesterday when I was in there. And I'm like, you guys are just probably the most underrated NA brewery in the country. I just think their products are so good and the technology is so good. And there was so much, we just discussed so much opportunity that they see because of how much sales they're just doing of this out of the tap room. And the Midwest in a many ways, starting with O'Doul's being made by Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis in the 90s, I think really is it played a really, we just are a big drinking culture here, big beer culture, big wine and spirits culture, all kind of through this Midwest region, which dates back to immigration in this area really in the 19th century. We had a lot of immigrants from Germany and from Ireland, in Central Europe that kind of came into this Midwest region of the US because it reminded them of their motherland, right? You have the Rhine region in Ohio, and then you go to places in Wisconsin, and there's a lot of names that are kind of referring to the Rhine Valley region, and Michigan in particular. When it comes to spirits and the ability to grow on this, you're basically in a Mediterranean type environment because you're surrounded by water, but it's cold. So you have a lot of seasonality, but the growing seasons and the richness of the soil there's some of the best soil on the earth is here for growing and producing, agriculture. As you know,
Yes.
because you're from Iowa. So we have this band, I guess, of really rich soil that came from really the recession of the Great Lakes, and the early glacial periods have really, it kind of allowed us to be blessed with this just amazing region. And it's cool because as craft grew, these small businesses begin to pop up. So really the last 15 years, I think have just been really transformational. And now we have technology and changing consumer behavior, which is why I'm here to talk to you
Yes.
today. And so, yeah, long way of saying I'm from the Midwest originally, but it's just a great place to stay because it keeps me really connected to the things that I love to do and people that I love.
Yeah, that was a really awesome explanation of the soil and the agricultural region of the Midwest. I really like that. I haven't thought of it like that before, because you're from there, but I love how passionate you are. Because it's too cold for me. I can't. So I moved south.
I
I'm
know.
such a wimp. I mean, it was
I hear you.
I'm even cold in Florida. It's just ridiculous to say that out loud. You know.
Well, I live in the sauna. I live in the saunas, thankfully the cost of accessing those has become more affordable for the layman these days. So the gym we go to has a
Nice.
sauna. I have a sauna blanket at home. I try to really embrace that Norwegian I'm Swedish, so I'm
Perfect.
embracing this sort of part of my own history that's okay, it's cold and I'm miserable right now because I'd much rather live in Hawaii or something, or Puerto Rico. But since I can't, I'll just sweat it out by the fire. And that seems to be, as long as I have something good to drink and good food and good company,
Yeah.
or a good book or something,
Good fire.
I'll get through it. But yeah, it's something for sure. But yeah, I've also had the pleasure, like I said, of experiencing winter in different parts of the country, and they all have something special to offer. But the Midwest is just where my family is, and it feels good to be able to hop in the car and go see my
Yeah, that
mom,
is
or
nice.
go do things with my family that was pretty hard before. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have made my way back here.
Yeah, that's great because you got to experience all different um, areas of the country. That's really cool. Well, Texas it gets
Hmm.
cold, but depending on where
Yeah.
you are, it's not too bad. And you can have your cold days, but then you get your warm
Yeah.
days. You don't know if it's gonna, rain or snow or
Yeah.
be 80 degrees on Christmas. It's so weird.
Dallas especially, Dallas is just that one wild card. But I lived in DFW, I lived in Fort Worth for a while. I lived in Dallas twice actually. Then I moved down to San Antonio. I lived 2 years in San Antonio and 1 year in
Oh
Austin,
wow, okay.
when I was working for Samuel Adams. So I kind of moved all over and sort of helped build up Texas, built relationships with all beer wholesalers down there. And I mean, I was at one point covering everything south of Austin all the way to the Mexico border, and then all the way out to El Paso, then all of Texas, and then Louisiana and Mississippi as well. So I think there was 48 beer distributors in my network at that time. So it was big.
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, it gives me a headache thinking about all those people you have to manage. Oh, that's so hard.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was fun because I got to drive all over Texas, and that part of the country is so unusual, and Big Bend National Park is so awesome, and
Yep.
and Marfa, Texas. I mean, just these weird places that I found that are so special to me now, and I'm so, yeah, I just would have never thought when I lived there, craft beer wasn't a thing yet. So I was still This would have been like 2008. So I'd be going into places in San Antonio, like one bar at a time with like a Sam Adams trying to tell them why they should take off one of their 5 mass domestic beers and add a craft beer on tap to like increase the revenue, one bar at a time. And like slowly we won them over, and started getting them to put it on the menu and then actually suggest to having it with food. And it was a really exciting time to,
Wow. That's so interesting.
yeah, to come when you talk about compare it to wine and spirits, especially. I feel like craft beer has a place there now. Like we did a lot of great work during that period of like '08 to like 2016, which was just really, really focused on like accelerating the visibility and availability of our brands in those spaces and creating opportunities. And then it just so perfectly transitioned, although not really meaning it to, we had kind of just a stable, continual rise of beer. And then when COVID hit, we've just seen this massive transformation of this very, very large cohort of drinkers, both in beer and in wine and spirits. And I think that's just, I am just so thrilled because looking at the history of my career, which we can go over in a second, I'm meeting more new people now, and it's like starting a whole second career, but still in the same industry, if that makes any sense.
100%.
Because people that are attracted to this category of alcohol-free and non-alcoholic, which I call AFNA, just to be concise, but the AFNA category, there's seems to be a few hundred people that are really dedicated to understanding the space and the consumer and like driving category growth in North America. And there's brands now from all over the world kind of starting to filter through that ecosystem. So it's so interesting because I feel like, yeah, I'm a dinosaur in the beer
No.
industry, but I've never met Jesse, so it's like, it's kind of cool because I'm meeting brand new people, and that's very fulfilling because it's nice to be able to bring your history and your experience, and when it's personal, because like in my case, I transformed my relationship with alcohol and stopped drinking alcohol 4 years ago. So there's this personal aspect to it, and still like a deep passion and love for the process of beer making and wine making and how we can construct a beautiful cocktail that's zero proof. So it's just every day I wake up and I'm like, how did this even happen? It's just so
You leaned
wonderful
in.
and challenging because it's like you lean in and we're doing all the same things we did back in '08, but we're doing it in a more competitive marketplace. And essentially, one of my professors so beautifully said this. He goes, every textbook you ever read on business that was written before COVID, you should throw away. Like there was so much that changed in the way that people think about how they choose to consume and purchase with e-commerce and the home and safety and well-being and moderation. Like he's like, we just don't even know what the application of this knowledge like will lead to, because and technology itself has just changed so much and had so much influence on this the entire way we go about selling and producing anything. So it's been a really interesting growth period. And it's not like I'm a dinosaur, but I'm not in a 40-year career, I'm in a 20-year career. So in 2 decades to see what it was like to be in CPG and manufacturing and the buy, make, sell model to now, I think it's just something I never would have anticipated.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Pre-COVID versus post-COVID. I guess we are. You don't think about it on a day-to-day basis like that, but I guess overall, the first year, people like probably drank too much, and then after that, they're like, "No, I can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
was just such a confusing,
Yeah.
weird, bizarre like time to not be able to leave your house and go anywhere. So yeah, that's actually very interesting and yeah, probably very, very true that it will be interesting to see how this plays out in the next few years. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your first career or the first job you had in the industry? Did you jump in right away or?
No, I didn't. After I graduated from Northern Illinois University in '04, and I went to work, actually, this is kind of funny and but also true. I worked for Philip
Okay.
Morris USA. So I worked for Marlboro cigarettes. I represented, like we have these massive portfolio of brands. They were a Fortune 4 company that owned SAB Miller when I worked for them. And I managed a really large territory outside Chicago. Which is very interesting because tobacco just presented was not what I thought I would be doing. I was working for a state house representative in Illinois as an intern and wanted to go get my master's degree and just needed money. So I found CPG to be a place where I could leverage my desire to be out being social and interacting with people, but also the ability to influence people and educate. So I was very attracted to that. So I started in the tobacco industry, and then I moved into the craft brewing industry after that in about '07, and then have been in that ecosystem ever since. I worked for Samuel Adams for Boston Beer from '07 to 2016. I did a lot of roles there. I started in Texas as an account manager, and then took on a district and then a region and then a national role, and moved to Boston, and I was beer education manager for
Oh,
North
fun.
America. And that was a really amazing and incredible experience, mainly because of the culture of Boston beer. And I think what you'll find is, as you do more podcasts, inevitably when you interview another person that worked there, they'll say what I said, that company is very special in how it's over 50% women. It was co-founded by a woman, Rhonda Kalman, who had a lot of influence on building the sales force there, and a lot of the reason why they're 50% women in their sales force. So, not to say that the company doesn't have any opportunities, but it's just special and unique in the way that they treat their employees and create opportunity. And certainly for me, coming in and not even knowing what craft beer was to leading all of beer education for the company for the United States was such a great just explanation of how they can transform people's careers. So I received a lot of training when I was there. We had for a sales team of about 300 at the time, we spent over $2 million a year on training,
Wow.
which is, people would ask us all the time, like, why would you they would ask Jim Cook, the founder, this, why would you spend so much money to train people if they could just go get a job somewhere else and leave? And this is not, maybe not unique to him. I believe somebody else said this, but he would say this response all the time. He would say, well, that's great, but what if I don't train them and they decide to stay and work here their entire career? There's a difference. You don't want people just to not be developed and then they stay and they're not able to. It's better to let people know that the grass may not be greener and give them everything you got. And I feel that Boston Beer did that. I accelerated my career because just by virtue of, my life, I was able to raise my hand and move a lot, and that just provided a lot of new opportunities. So I went to UC Davis and I did the brewing program there. I took sensory classes. I'm a certified Cicerone. I'm a certified BJCP judge, all things that were supported by Boston Beer. And my last role there was very interesting. I was able to be a part of a really cool project with the first craft brewery in the United States. We rebuilt that and rebrewed that brand for the first time since 1978. And then we gave that company back to the man and his daughter who owned it originally, and Boston Beer had bought it when the trademark became available. So we found that guy in my homebrew club. We
That's
did a huge
cool.
project. That was really fun. And then it was so fun. And then I moved to Boston and built this little scrappy team with a couple really great young men. And I built a training program for our beer distributors and for all of our national retailer partners, for our national account team. So we would travel the country, and we, as a Boston Beer team, would sample them on, let's say, like 40 beers over the course of 2 days, but only maybe like 3 of them would be Sam Adams. They were meant to be stylistic trainings and teaching. At this time, in like 2013 to 2016, like people weren't being taught to sell a portfolio in that way. We really trained them how to pass the Cicerone test, but through the lens of here's how you can portfolio sell based on style and premiumization and the specialty nature of in brewing, especially, it's like bread making. It's here's the special process that goes into producing these beers and flavors. So we did that. We trained almost 8,000 people in 2 years. It was just
That's
it was
awesome.
just incredible. And so I still run into people at beer distributors or out and about at conferences. They're like, you trained me, in 2014. And, and I was like, yeah, that's wonderful. So we had really a good internal team of trainers that had amassed a lot of material. And then I just sort of took what was the best out of theirs, created some things on my own, and then just went, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no training being a professional trainer, but just love people and was able to kind of just go do it, and it was great. So I did that, and then I went into the hops industry for a while. So then I moved to Idaho and helped open a hop processing facility with the great granddaughter of the Albertsons family. Her name is Jamie Scott. their family owns a bunch of businesses in Idaho, and she became involved in the hops industry. And Idaho is the second largest hop growing region in the United
That makes
States.
sense.
And there's many sixth generation hop farms out there. It's high desert. It's like perfect growing conditions. They grow really great hops there. They're a very independent group of growers. So I went out and helped start up this pelleting facility and processing facility for hops called Mill 95, and we grew that business. We grew that business pretty rapidly over the course of about 18 months. And then I relocated to Michigan and got into hop extracts. So then I
Ah,
started selling like sustainable extracts. Yeah.
interesting.
And then I was making beers with like Anheuser-Busch and Miller Coors and big craft breweries with Lagunitas and Heineken. And what I noticed was they were focusing their innovation efforts on making things like hop waters and CBD waters and non-alcoholic beers. And at that time, Anheuser-Busch said to us, and this is knowledge because they had put this in like their annual reports, but they said like by 2026 or 2027, I believe, that 20% of their global revenue would come from NA.
Wow.
And this was in 2019, like before COVID. And I just kept thinking like they already see this coming. And they were, making references to things like Mick Ultra, things that were like very
Yep.
low carb. That's when like low carb and keto and fasting were sort of like the wellness trend was starting again because people were aware.
Yep.
And then when COVID hit, it just accelerated it, and it changed the culture of how people purchase and consume. And then now we're in the Ozempic days,
Yep.
and like, this total shift of what people are willing to do to kind of take control of their health and get themselves to where they want to be. So all of these things have really helped me grow to what I'm doing now. And I worked for New Zealand Hops as well. So I represented New Zealand in the US for a while. I worked in the adult use cannabis industry in Michigan doing some consulting, but always with a focus on beverage, like unique and innovative beverage formulation, sensory training. But I'm a salesperson by nature, right? So I can develop businesses. And so I developed a consulting firm in 2016 called Hop Forward Consulting. And post COVID, I saw the emergence of this hemp derived THC category, which is basically why you can walk into a grocery store these days and see a THC drink on the shelf. So the 2018 Farm Bill had allowed that. And then it wasn't sort of modified during this last round of legislation. So now in 38 states, THC derived from hemp can be purchased in a traditional retailer. So I've been taking companies that want to transition their businesses from maybe marijuana inputs, which had to be sold in a dispensary, to hemp inputs and can be sold through a traditional wholesaler network. So I've got a bunch of clients and been working on that. And then I developed
Interesting.
the world's first professional beverage training and certification program called AFicioNAdo, which is meant to give people like a Cicerone or Somm level training on alcohol-free and non-alcoholic beer, wine, spirits, and cannabis beverage, because these are either alcohol alternatives or something meant to be an analog of an alcoholic product for somebody who can't drink alcohol for whatever reason. Maybe you're on a weight loss drug, maybe you are trying to enhance your performance, but you still want to be social and have a drink. Now this category really provides a lot of opportunity. So I feel that this has been one of the greatest opportunities I've uncovered in my career, primarily because at the end of 2019, I stopped drinking alcohol myself. I was definitely for many years, over 2 decades, consuming over the recommended amount daily. It was having a very negative impact on my mental health and my physical health as a mom. And I just really, I could not moderate, Jesse. I struggled to have
Yeah.
just one. I couldn't, for whatever reason. I'm not wired that way. And I would try to quit and I couldn't. And I'd feel like I'd just end up over consuming more. And it was a really dark period
Yeah.
for a while. I was kind of secretly struggling because I'm getting paid this great money to fly around the country and teach people about beer. And every night I felt so awful and sick, and every morning just trying to get myself, excited to go to work again became difficult for me. And then even after I left a brewery, I still struggled to manage my consumption. So then I knew it wasn't a job. I knew it was me, and didn't know what to do. And I'm very prideful. So I was secretive and didn't really tell people I needed help. And then I I got my medical cannabis license at the end of 2019 in Michigan. And then New Year's Eve, I sort of did the Cali sober pathway. I did a program called 1 Year No Beer. and made 30 days alcohol free, but I was sort of using cannabis to sort of support that journey in terms of
Hmm.
healing. So it helped with a lot of inflammation. It helped, because it was hard. I really did like actually physically detox, and I was just a normal consumer of alcohol, but I was drinking every day. And after about 90 days, I was actually physically unrecognizable to most people. People would come up to me and be like, "What happened to you? You look different."
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. And so then I decided to go 1 year alcohol free. And it was such a significant internal change at that point that then I started like, getting into personal development and consciousness and my behaviors. And I see, when we talked about the questions for today, you asked if I had I wonder if looking back in my career, and I often wonder if I would have found alcohol free and non-alcoholic products earlier in my career, what it might look like now, because I actually had to go out of the industry kind of and then come back. This is like my comeback
Right.
story, truly, because I didn't think I could come back to the industry and contribute in a meaningful way, because A, I didn't think people would think I was credible if I wasn't drinking alcohol, which is totally not true.
Right. No.
And then B, I wasn't sure if I could do it, if I
Right.
could just go out for dinners where maybe there wouldn't be an option, but nowadays there just are. And then I kind of found a way to fly my flag, and I'll get into it in a minute, but there's just so many key people that begin to emerge that either were sharing this experience with me or really believed in what I was doing and knew me from before and saw me, and they were like, wow, I had no idea. And you obviously look very different. Like, what happened to you? And then as a result of that, we found ways to collaborate and work together. And that has just been, again, I think I don't believe in just coincidence or luck. I'm a woman of faith, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I know it wasn't just my own willpower to get me to where I am now, but definitely that healing process and taking time to meditate and reflect and really renew my own mind and then renew my behaviors. And that just is something that a person can't do with their own power. So as a result of that, started to notice that I was just so many amazing people were being presented to me every day to help me navigate this big career change. And I'm very grateful for
Yeah.
that.
Why don't you talk about some of your mentors that kind of helped you through that? I mean, yeah, it's interesting too, that you realized that you needed to lean on people, and I think people probably at the same time said, "Hey, I can help this person because either they've been through the same struggle, or it's their
Hmm.
superpower." So that's great. I'm glad that It's definitely something that would be very hard to do on your own, without a support team. So that's fantastic. I love that. It's so heartwarming.
Yeah, it is. It is a good story because it's sad in the beginning. They wrote an article was written in this publication called Good Beer Hunting, and it's about the culture of over drinking in our careers, right? Like when you work in the alcohol beverage industry, it is a different animal when you think about the nature of consuming, because it's our product. So we start early, you're at lunch, you can easily go all day. And then, and so I was not alone in that, but you also have to be really careful about asking for help in the alcohol beverage industry, because then you can become in some ways, at least in the way it was before, kind of perceived as a person who maybe doesn't have as much career potential. And this is just whether or not companies want to admit that. Like, that was how it was before, but now it's much different. Now I'm seeing a lot of like employee resource groups dedicated to sobriety and things of that nature. But yeah, it really would say, like, going into like my early career at Boston Beer, like I just had really good managers and mentors there that helped develop me. I mean, and Jim Cook, the founder, personally also helped me and developed an interest in what I was doing. But John Geis, that he's just retiring as their VP of sales, also took a personal interest in me and my team. And I think, Texas was an important market to them, but they just care about people. They would go out of their way to be a really big part of our business. And I learn by doing. So you can give me all the examples you want, but I have to just throw myself
Right.
into it,
Just got
get
to do it.
feedback, and then fix it. So I had a lot of good opportunities to do that. Actually, this woman named Lee Gall, she trained me at Boston Beer. She worked there before me, and now she's my business partner in my consulting firm. So a lot of these things have come back full circle. There's a man named Grant Wood who lives in Texas and started Revolver Brewing. He was
Oh
a
yeah.
brewmaster at Samuel Adams, and went on to help me in other businesses. I think of Dr. Bill Simpson, from the sensory world, who I've taken like 140 hours of training with his team.
That is so cool. I love
So
that.
just just amazing people that I would read about, and then I would meet them in person. And not only are they sweet, like I think I have to just say it before I mention anybody else, is Dr. Keith Villa and his wife Jody and their daughter Catherine. Keith invented Blue Moon and then went on to create an NA brewery called Saria. And him and his wife are the ones that told me to build a training. They're like, it's absolutely needed. If we want to grow this category, they're just so encouraging and have a million other ways to spend their time. But they chose to spend it helping me, develop this thing. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And I had tons of personal mentors too, Jesse. I really do believe in the power of personal transformation, and it is really like birds of a feather. If you flock toward people that drive you and motivate you, and also you can be truthful with about really what's going on with yourself, because until we can speak the truth, we can't be helped.
Right.
You have to be able to say like, hey, even now, like I talk about the struggles I had before, because those risks still exist, and there's still healing that has to be done when you covered up your issues for so long. So, but ultimately, every place I've worked, every consulting job I've had, I think now about the team I have with this company called Happy, and I'm working with this THC seltzer company called Happy, and Lisa Hurwitz and her partner Joe Reynolds are just brilliant people that just understand CPG in a whole new way, and they challenge us to get better. And working with a new THC margarita company called High Tide, the Boston beer people, Josh Grab and his partner Shay. I mean, these guys are just, they're like me. They're willing to take the risk to try to change a category and bring people along with them and be in an alcohol adjacent space. So it's a really exciting time. It's a high risk time, but the reward is there. I think it's a validated category. So when we get into that, the outlooks, here in a few minutes, I think that's really it. But I'd say that leaving Boston Beer was transformational in that I gave up the security of that corporate,
Yep.
that was really scary. I was not prepared for that. I thought like, oh, I'm just going to jump into something and immediately be successful. And the truth of the matter is I went through a lot of companies that had leadership that was just not up to par. I had a very naive look that if you held the title of CEO, you must be this human, transformational guru, and like you must have it all together. And I really was very focused on titles instead of realizing really early on that you can learn something from everyone, no matter what their title is or where you meet them every day, by listening and asking good questions. So I would say that leaving Boston Beer was transformational, and that it was very hard. And I went through a lot of jobs that I did not like, and opportunities that disappointed me and were heartbreaking, and leaders that said one thing and did another, and no fault of their own, just that is just the reality of the world. Like, just not every human is conscious, and that's not anybody's fault. That's just like, we're not taught that. So until you learn it, just because somebody has a fancy title or something of that nature, as a leader in a company, doesn't necessarily warrant their ability to be a leader and motivator to an individual or a team. So I always just tried to do my best to learn and speak up if I wasn't getting what I needed. And that wasn't always easy either. But Boston Beer put me in a position to try a lot of new things, because I had a lot of experience and good training. And I'm really, really grateful for having spent 10 years of my career with that organization, because I would say that had I not done that, I wouldn't know how to do a lot with little resources, because they taught us how to do that very well, and B, have a really solid framework of sales that has been successful, and I've modeled it in different industries, and it's very successful, and it produces revenue and it produces margin. So I think that's says something about their model. So yeah, I think that those guys are really great, and in terms of like learning tools and things that I'd like to share with your listeners, a couple of things in the NA space that have been really helpful to me. I mentioned 1 year no beer, which was a program that I used to, it was like a challenge, it was like a 30-day challenge I signed up for. And that challenge mentality was a winning ticket for me. Like, I didn't feel deprived when I was challenging myself. And that's just kind of how I'm wired. So 1 year no beer. And it was also very personally motivating, but it wasn't enough. It was not enough. I don't think I would have made it had I not also been practicing transcendental meditation at my university. So I did my MBA in sustainability at the Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa, which is basically like the Harvard of human consciousness in the middle of this tiny farm town.
Interesting.
Um, Oprah Winfrey, Oprah Winfrey was trained there. Jim Carrey was trained there. David Lynch was trained there. It's a very, very powerful technology of consciousness, which allows you to immediately enter a fourth state of consciousness, which is different than waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And it clears stress from the physiology and creates brainwave coherence within 2 minutes. And so all
Wow.
that built up stress that we carry in our body without having to do anything, but rather sit and relax, it allows the body to sort of purify itself. And in that, you're achieving a very high level of rest, about 8 hours of rest in 20 minutes, and doing that consistently with a lot of people that much smarter than I am that have PhDs in the topic. So I studied that for pretty in depth since about 2018. I also hired a PhD coach in something called the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
So I hired an academic expert of the Enneagram. I learned, because before I had meditated, I actually had never experienced myself as an inner witness, meaning like I just walked around in life until I was in my 40s, listening to the voice in my own head and thinking that that was me and doing whatever it said. I didn't know that was my ego. I had no idea what that meant. So once I experienced that for the first time, I was like, well, what is that? And someone's like, oh, that's just your ego. I'm like, well, what's my ego? Like, how do I know what now? How do I trust now what I'm thinking and know when to question it? So then I started to study that framework in depth for about 18 months at
Interesting.
the
That's very
PhD
cool.
level,
Wow.
read every academic book I could get my hands on with it. And I started taking better care of my physical health. So I started working out more, anything, just yoga. Just, I was not a body person. I'm a mental person. So I would just walk around like a floating head all day and not really be in my body. So doing, running, Orange Theory, yoga, whatever I could do to like get out of my head and into my body really helped me find out that like I would get a weird feeling in my heart or my stomach, but I would ignore it because my ego likes to be in my brain all day thinking up things. So I think those were the tools that really, really helped me. I did read a book also that I tell a lot of people about, called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. When I first stopped drinking alcohol, she was a wine industry executive that wrote a book that really kind of breaks down a lot of our false beliefs about what alcohol does for us. It makes me more social. It makes me more attractive. It makes me more fun, more creative, all these things. And she kind of debunks them. And that really helped me. And I'd say the combination of those things allowed me to be successful and in maintaining a zero proof lifestyle. Although, kind of moving quickly into one of the next questions we had discussed, which is like the pain points of the industry today. I think what I don't want my journey to turn into is me flying a flag that like alcohol is bad. I think what I really learned from this experience, and one of the pain points I have to overcome, is that you can actually drink more if you're a drinker and you're blending or substituting these into your like normal consumption patterns. Like, you don't have to be me and be zero proof. You can have a glass of wine or your favorite drink, add in some of these AFNA beverages, and then everybody wins, and I think that's there's an inherently socially sustainable aspect of that when people are drinking these in a more balanced way, it just seems to be improving things not only for the individual but in the environment around them as a radiating effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I'd like to see more of, because there is pushback. Like, why am I going to pay more for a product that doesn't have alcohol in it? I'm like, well, here's exactly why you should do that, because it's going to help all your alcohol sales. Like, these are analogs of it for a reason. That person, that drinker, is actually already making the decision that they're not going to consume alcohol. So they're going to drink water, tea, soda, energy drinks, or you can premiumize the experience for them and give them great analog beer, wine, or zero proof cocktail or RTD or a cannabis beverage that's going to be something adjacent to them in that space. So that is something that is the pain point right now. It's like, how do we help the retail market? How do we educate them so that they can talk to people and recognize more opportunities to sell these products? And so that's something that I think we've taken this body of knowledge and like tried to condense down into something anybody could teach. So all of our curriculum can be accessed by anyone, and if they're an educator basically, and then taught on behalf of them because I've already created it. So that's with alcohol-free aficionados, of course. So all of our courses, like we're clients with BrewDog, and BrewDog licenses the material and then goes and trains their retailers and wholesalers on AF beer because they believe in that opportunity, and they run up into the same challenges that we do, which is, it's crowded right now. Why should I bring this in? There's so many offerings. How do I sell it? No one's going to drink NA beer if I put it on my menu. And then the reality is that's just not true because we see it in the numbers, not only in the declines in Bev Alc purchases, but also in the increases in things like THC beverage and, NA beer and things of that nature. So I tell people now that we've done the research, there's tons of good articles out there. There's a few interesting factors that are happening in the industry now that I would say is what is leading to a pretty positive outlook, but one that shows we have a lot of work to do. Like NA and AF beverages are 1% of the entire industry value right now. And it's a $1 billion industry, which is not much, and spreads pretty thin when you have hundreds of SKUs, which is the reality. But the trends underneath are telling us that I shouldn't even say a trend. We're beyond trend. And it's an established consumer behavior now to purchase something because of wellness reasons. And as we've kind of already discussed, that translates into a real revenue opportunity, which is why I think the pain point is just limited by education. And I keep telling my distributors and giving talks called Make Zero Your Biggest Asset. So take this category opportunity and leverage it, because zero doesn't mean lacking. Zero is actually uncovering an opportunity that already exists. And there's factors playing into it that have a lot to do with COVID, that have a lot to do with things like weight loss drugs, which are going to be a $60 billion industry, which prohibit people really from being able to consume alcohol. And all of these tell me primarily driven by hemp-derived THC beverages, which is going to represent about 25 billion in category growth in the next 7 years in the alc bev space, if it achieves 10% of category sales. And we're already seeing that in markets like Minnesota. But when you add then AF and NA beer, wine, spirits, RTD, it's 35 billion roughly on about a 7-year maturity curve. So these are real numbers that I think are important for the industry to believe in. And you can follow the money. You can follow the capex that was just spent at Anheuser-Busch and Leuven putting in new dealcoholization units. You can follow the revenue being spent on weight loss drugs and hearing the anecdotal stories of those patients saying, like, I can't drink alcohol anymore because it makes me sick. Or the cohort of people that are like, I listened to the Andrew Huberman podcast, which is another resource I'll quickly plug on alcohol, your brain, and your body. And he does a 3-hour long form post on this. So they're like, I heard that, and now I don't drink my wine Monday through Friday. I just drink it on Saturday nights. So what are they replacing those drinking occasions with? So for all of those reasons, I think there's a major upside that we're looking at. There's a $35 billion flag to capture, but that category has to be built. And that's something I see a lot of opportunity for, so much so that I want to stay around and help the industry develop that capability.
Yeah, I love it. It needs you. And you're very passionate, and you're the perfect person for it. I love it.
Well, we're all in it together. I'd say I don't feel like this is work. I feel like I'm getting to talk to all of my brothers and sisters in the industry every day that we just come back around this. So it doesn't even mean that somebody's alcohol free, but they're all sharing their story of I just kind of started changing this one aspect of my relationship with alcohol. And it's totally been great. I just drink one beer and then a couple NAs and then switch back, or I don't drink during the week, but on the weekends I still do, and I feel great. And here's the result of that. And that is exciting to me, because that tells me now that people are even within themselves, and these are industry people, realizing that stigma doesn't have to exist anymore. And there's a lot of great options. And, we need AFNA to continue to
Mm-hmm.
grow the alcohol beverage industry as a total, because they're not, again, they're still part of the industry. These beverages need to be sold through the same system. And they're still great. Like an NA beer, an AFNA beer is still a beer. It's just a beer that has under 0.5% ABV. Therefore, it's not encumbered by the same regulatory restrictions, and it creates new opportunities to, depending on what state you live in, drink a beer while you're driving to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I think creating those new opportunities for people, have a beer at your church, which is what I did over the weekend, right? I brought in NA beers to my church and saw people who felt like their whole life they've always been excluded from things because people know they don't drink, but I saw them drinking NA Corona and like loving it, and I just think I like the idea. I'm a social person. I like to go out and create interesting experiences for people. So at the end of the day, my mission at AFicioNAdo and in my personal life has always been to empower the way that people connect. Like for me, that's like my magic thing, is like I like to influence that event and occasion because I love people. And especially now that I plug it into something meaningful, like how do I create a better lifestyle for somebody just by giving them a different option they maybe didn't know about before. Then of course, if I get around to sharing my story with them, maybe there's a different connection there. But I'm so motivated by that now to want to get up and share this category with people, whether, no matter how they're participating in it, because I think everybody can win if we embrace it together.
Yeah, and it's about inclusion, right? I spoke with Heather, and she's real focused on restaurants, and it's about going out to dinner and being included. Like wow, you're looking out for everybody when you have an
Yes.
NABEV
Yes.
option.
Yes.
And we have generations behind us that are coming up that are telling us this exact same thing. So it's an industry that's going to continue to grow. I mean, everything starts somewhere, right?
I totally agree. Yeah, there's the growth opportunity is huge, and I think you play an important role. I think having these types of formats to educate and let people listen in and think about how this might impact their business or their personal life. It either starts at the individual level or the organizational level for somebody. So I encourage everybody who's sober curious for themselves or curious about what type of revenue opportunity really exists in my company and organization for AFNA. It doesn't matter what field you're in. There's a place, if you're having beverages at the place you work, there's an opportunity. And so just think that's something really exciting.
Any New Year's resolutions for 2024?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things on my plate this year is time management, especially as it relates to technology. I'm really embracing AI to try to teach myself how to work less hours. What I have learned about human potential is that it's kind of like the energy that you have. We always say at our university, when you pull back a bow and arrow, like if you don't take that active rest, like you can't shoot properly. So I realize now that I get so
Interesting.
much more done in like that 35 to 40 focused. I used to just work so much and always be available, but now I find, but by saying no and being like doing the other things that are just see them in my old life, I would have been like, oh, that person's so lazy, like they're only working like 35 or 40 hours a week. Oh, they're not working as hard as me. And I'm like, well, what good are you? What good are you after that 35th hour when you have nothing left and you're not actually being creative, you're not actually listening, you're not actually paying attention to your family, you're just doing nothing actually.
Right.
And so I think for me, leading by example in that regard, to show how to just do this, that scientific, proving your own point, is like the Tim Ferriss sort of philosophy of like, how do I have my best year ever and work half as much? I
Yep.
think that's a New Year's resolution I'm very
I
interested
like
in
it.
exploring next year. Yeah, which is like good for all of us. And I think that's another thing we have to teach ourselves, because we have the resources and tools now with AI to allow ourselves that creative and recovery time. But human creativity becomes the asset now. Human creativity can't be replaced by ChatGPT. Therefore, if you don't take the time to generate creativity by doing these things, like you're just contributing to like the churn of the machine, if you will. Like you're just doing inputs. And I always ask myself the question these days, am I consuming information or am I contributing? And then try to manage the amount of time I spend doing the consumption aspect.
Yeah, that's a really good thought.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really appreciate you asking good questions like this because it's fun.
Good, good. Yay, thank you. Are you a writer or a poet, just by chance?
I do write a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could
I
tell.
write a lot, and I do think it's something that I'm good at, and I'm a very verbally inclined person with like high language comprehension, and I had just it runs in my family, so I've been blessed with um, people that just have a very good command of words, and I think it's backed by something that's in my family DNA is love. I have so many loving people in my family that just freely give love to like strangers. Like I think of my aunt who will go to any up to the first person she sees in Kroger and start to, explore their lives, try to bless somebody by just putting a hand on them and saying hello. She's just so fearless. And my mom, working in juvenile detention with kids, and my husband's parents are work with their pastors and social workers, and the way they work with people in the community, I think has had a really big influence on me. And I think a lot about the work that I do and how can I just, if sometimes when you look somebody in the eye and smile at them or put your hand on their shoulder and just give them an encouragement. Sometimes for some people, that's a lot more meaningful and powerful over time than you could even imagine. There's a lot of data behind that. So I feel blessed because those are things that you can't coach or teach into people. They tend to be there, and that's something that I think makes what I get to do really unique and special.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're a writer. What other passions do you have outside of work?
I love nature and gardening. My husband is the green thumb and a master gardener, but we love to hike and camp and go, do all the things. Like we went to the redwoods and hiked in the redwoods, and we love our kids to be outdoors. We love sports. So I do a lot of like sauna, and I love to read. I constantly am reading or listening to something. I'd say like self improvement through education and learning is probably like my Achilles heel, because like I'm constantly stuffing information in and like wanting to take it all in, and at the same time trying to feel like put the phone down and like go outside and be barefoot and stand in the grass, because those silly things that seem really woo woo and new age are actually part of connecting with ourselves and part of like who humans are. So I'm really passionate about like wellness and personal development and just nature in general, and growing in my faith, the spiritual and emotional development. I try to spend as much time as I can, since I wasn't that way before, and it seemed to be contributing to some of the reasons I felt so lost all the time and was always searching for something more and a new experience to replace maybe a deeper longing for connection that I didn't have before. And then when I stopped being in pain all the time, and I like to laugh and tell people, I'm like, it's kind of funny when you're not like thinking about drinking, planning to drink, drinking, and recovering from drinking, you have a lot more time on your hands. So, like,
Yeah.
I found that, I recovered a lot of time that I could orient in a productive way. And a lot of it had to do with like why was I actually going after those things in the first place? Going after that experience of drinking and socializing, because for me it was kind of filling that gap of being in connection with something, maybe a little, something more powerful than just myself. And that was really helpful for me. And I think that journey is so different for everybody, but it's certainly a really important part of my story. And always happy to share that with people, no matter what we believe. I think just hearing someone's own individual story of transformation sometimes can be really powerful. And I love to share that with people.
Yeah, I'm glad you came on and did that, because I think it is important, especially as this segment gets bigger. More and more people probably are going to do this. Try not the exact same, but try to do a similar transition in life. So it's a major part of life. It changes a lot of things for you and your family.
Yeah.
It's not just about you. I mean, you're a mom, you have kids, you have your wife. So all those things you have to learn you have to train your brain differently, right?
Yep, 100%. You couldn't have said that better. It's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we should end on that then.
Yes.
Because I can't.
I love it. Well,
I don't think I could
can't
come up with
top
anything
that,
else
right?
today.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead, bud.
well, that was so beautiful, and I'm so glad, and I hope we get to do this again sometime and continue the conversation, especially if you have listeners that we end up hearing from that are like sober curious, or like, what's it like? How can I possibly do this? To like I'm trying it, but give me some of your best practices. Please don't, let's encourage them to reach out to us, and I'd be so interested to see how we could collaborate in the future for sure.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be fun. Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll see what happens.
Yes. Wonderful.
And yeah,
Great.
that's actually really cool. Maybe we'll be able to help some people through this podcast. That'd be really awesome. Really awesome.
I have no doubt that you will, Jesse, for sure. You are a bright light, and this industry needs people like you. So I'm glad that you invited me to do this, and I'm glad for our connection, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, agreed 100%. I'm so happy that I met you, and looking forward to the future, whatever that is or whatever that looks like. So you are also a bright light and
Wonderful.
amazing energy. I need to do what you're doing, I guess. Like, it's amazing.
Well, we'll do it together. Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely continue the discussion, because I think that there's something to be said about developing cohorts of people that are just interested in these topics, because we're all better together at the end of the day, and sharing the individual experience is what makes it really powerful, because somebody out there will relate to somebody in the group. It always works that way. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I love it. So yeah, when I'd love to come back.
I always like to wave.
Sounds great, Jesse. See you later.
Bye.
Yay, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Tune in next Thursday and have a great week. This week's episode was produced by Fedora J Productions.